All right, we are now live. You are tuned in to the first ever episode of The Luke Sharp Show. So I just want to say welcome to the show. The purpose of this show is going to be to break down the important news articles of the day, be it from Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. So, and anywhere else you guys would like me to cover topics from, I will definitely be covering those topics as well. Today we have a very, very special episode. Not only is it 420 today, but we also have Maxime Bernier joining us at 1 o'clock for a live interview. So I'm going to break down how the show is going to go typically. We're going to go over numerous amounts of different articles, everything from the World Economic Forum to digital IDs to all of these draconian policies that are currently being passed throughout our countries. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more Canada-centric, as we will be talking to Maxime Bernier at 1 p.m. That's 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're going to cover some of the things that we are going to be discussing with Maxime. That way you guys have a little bit of knowledge of the topics at hand when we do sit down and talk to him. With that being said, let's get into the first article. Okay, the first article we are going to be covering is a very amazing article by independent journalist Keon Bexday. Now this is from the Counter Signal, and this is his news publication. Canada is a partner in WEF's program to bring digital ID to travel. Now this is a very, very interesting development, as this will see a sort of social credit system that has been implemented by the Chinese government making its way into Canada. So we're going to go over this article now. The government of Canada, Air Canada, and two major Canadian airports have partnered with the World Economic Forum on a digital ID project that could see a social credit-like system be required for traveling in Canada. The Canadian government is listed as a partner on the WEF's own known traveler identity website. The pilot group convened by the World Economic Forum consists of the Government of Canada, the Netherlands, Air Canada, KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, Montreal Trudeau International Airport, Toronto Pearson International Airport, and Amsterdam Airport Schiphol, writes the World Economic Forum. Now, it's important to note that in order to be able to travel, the traveler must share all information by the relevant entity, such as a border agency. This will mean like anything from your criminal record to your health history. Some have criticized the World Economic Forum for pushing the Great Reset onto the developed world. Indeed, the World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab has openly bragged about how he has penetrated the cabinets of the world, including the government of Liberal Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, this is a quote directly from the video where he makes these claims. I have to say, when I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel and even Vladimir Putin and so on, they have all been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. But what we are very proud of now is the young generation like Prime Minister Trudeau. We penetrate the cabinet. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of his cabinet, or even more than half of his cabinet, are actually young global leaders. Some claim that the World Economic Forum is influential. It's by no means running or directly influencing the Canadian government. However, this pilot program suggests the opposite is true. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people are finding this type of policy particularly disturbing, because if you combine this with the central bank digital currencies where they're able to turn off your money, so now you're not allowed to travel based on your criminal history, the things you've spoken about, talking badly about the government, but then they can also shut off your money as well. So this is definitely one of those things that we're going to have to keep watch for in the future and make sure that we stay on top of, so that way we don't have these types of things pass. So let's get into the next article. U.S. federal judge declares that the mask mandate for planes, trains, and buses is unlawful. For over a year in the United States, federal law required that anyone traveling on planes, trains, or buses wear a face mask when doing so. Now, thanks to Florida federal court judge Catherine Kimball Mizell, the mandate has been deemed unlawful. Now, in July 2021, Sarah Pope and a DESA and Health Freedom Defense Fund sued various government officials and the CDC, seeking a declaratory judgment that the mask mandate was unlawful and to have it revoked for violating the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA. The court concluded that the mask mandate exceeds the CDC's authority and violates the procedures required for agency rulemaking under the APA. The court has vacated the mandate and remanded it to the CDC. This means that the mask mandate is officially over for traveling on planes, trains, and buses in the United States. And I just want to say that most of these articles that we're going to go over, I will add to the comment section when we are finished. I will add it to the description section of each of the video platforms that we do upload the show to. So I just wanted to make that clear. You're going to definitely have all the links to all these articles so you can go over and read them yourself afterwards. So in about 15 minutes, Maxime Bernier will be joining us here. There is a very, very special website that I want to call attention to, and it's extremely important because the good people at this website have taken the time to research all of the Canadian politicians who are actually in bed with the World Economic Forum. This website is called beyondthenarrative.ca, as you can see up here above. And this is an absolutely amazing, amazing website with some amazing journalism done. So here are the Canadian members of the World Economic Forum, as you can see. We have the federal government, Justin Trudeau, Chrystia Freeland, Jagmeet Singh. We also have Pierre Poilievre, and it's interesting to note here that his actual web page on the World Economic Forum was actually removed, but thanks to the Internet Archives, we are actually able to still see this website, as the Internet Archives all deleted websites, so that way we can see them even after they've been deleted. So we're going to take a quick look at his webpage here on the WEF, and this is his webpage from the World Economic Forum, as it was before it was deleted. So he was definitely mentioned on the World Economic Forum. So that's a very interesting thing to note. And today we do have Maxime Bernier joining us. And although he did attend the World Economic Forum meeting in January 2008, he did so as a Minister of Foreign Affairs. So for reference, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Canada right now is Melanie Joly. And many people are probably asking, well, who is that? And this is my point exactly. The Minister of Foreign Affairs doesn't have any real sway on domestic policy. They're more so a political. They basically just parrot the party's policies on foreign policy. That's basically the Minister of Foreign Affairs job. So he was basically there just to parrot the world. To parrot the conservative stance on foreign policy. But don't worry, we're going to get into that a little bit more once he joins us. So he'll be able to tell you his whole story within regards to that. Now we have numerous people inside the government who are working for the World Economic Forum, and this has been going on for quite some time. So here's Melanie Joly here, and she actually does have her own page on the World Economic Forum. It goes deep, folks. It's very, very deep. From premiers of the provinces to mayors of cities to different businesses. So if you guys want to find out more information about this, please visit beyondthenarrative.ca, as they have all the information of all the Canadian politicians who are currently working for the World Economic Forum. I do have I just realized I totally forgot to pull up the article while I was scrolling. So this is going to be an issue for me because I'm also the editor. I'm also the talking head. I'm also the researcher. So please bear with me if I kind of mess up a little bit while I'm doing this first ever episode. Anyway, this is the website I was trying to show you guys. It's beyondthenarrative.ca. So on this website, you can actually see all of the politicians who are currently working for the World Economic Forum. BeyondTheNarrative.ca does mention that they have not found any evidence of Maxime Bernier being at the forum. So being a member of the forum. Sorry, he has obviously visited there in 2008 as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, but besides that, he had never been back again. And the people here on this journalism platform have done some incredible work. So I really do implore you to check out beyondthenarrative.ca. I did end up queuing up a whole bunch of different articles today, but I can already tell that I'm not going to get to them in time because I still want to make sure I have time to introduce Maxime Bernier, introduce the People's Party of Canada for you guys, so you guys know exactly who he is before we go and talk to him. So let's get into a few more articles here before we finish up. One thing people keep saying to me in the comments section is COVID camps do not exist. Now, this is false. Numerous people were following everything that was happening in Australia, and the people that were following this understand what had happened there. Now, inside Australia, they did use their very own COVID camps. They did isolate people who were not vaccinated. So this is very disturbing. And why is it disturbing? Because Australia is a Commonwealth nation. So if they can lock down similar to China did, it's very plausible that the United States could, that the United Kingdom could, that Canada could. Now, mind you, the United States has a whole bunch of safeguards in place, such as the Second Amendment, so the government won't really try to step on too many toes in regards to that. But anyway, I'm going to play this video for you guys so you guys can see that there really was COVID camps and they took place in Australia. So we're going to play this video for you just for a sec. It's only 1 minute and 50 seconds long.
That you have to stand above and obey the rules while you're here, yeah? And we have to go the rules again. I don't care.
So am I allowed to go to the laundry?
You're allowed to go to the laundry, but you've got to wear a mask, yeah?
Yeah, righto.
Yeah. And you definitely can't go up the fence anywhere else. But you're allowed to go to the laundry, yeah? That's always been the case, yeah?
Right, so if I was sitting just here, which is right near the fence, why are these guys in a cabin that's right near the fence? It makes no sense, does it?
Yeah, but you can't leave your balcony to go to the fence to talk to somebody else. That's just obvious, yeah?
So if I was
Again,
at that balcony...
Make sense. So there has to be lines everywhere drawn, yeah? And one of the lines is you cannot leave your balcony and you cannot go to someone else. Where it makes no sense or doesn't seem right to you, that is the line, and that's what the law is, yeah? And that's how it goes, yeah?
The law.
What a show direction.
There's a law that says
show
that.
Direction, yep. There's a show direction, yeah? And how the behaviour must be done, especially in this area because it's much more highly infectious and likely to have infected people, yeah?
Highly infectious when all of us people are negative.
So,
they all tested negative and they still have to go to this
while you're here,
concentration.
can we just do that? Otherwise, the next time it's a $5,000 fine, and we don't want to do that.
It's a $5,000 fine if what?
If you breach again.
If I walk out onto that path.
Without your mask on, for no reason other than the laundry.
If I cross that yellow line,
saying that you've broken the rule.
that I've broken the rule, I will be issued with a $5,000 fine.
That's correct.
Right.
Okay. We could even do that now, but we're giving the warning first. Have a chat with you because...
So anyway, guys, as you guys can clearly see, there are COVID concentration camps out there, and they exist in Australia. And one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you guys about this is because I keep hearing people say that that's not true. There's actual evidence of this actually taking place. Now, I also want to bring attention to Canada's own government website, where they have actually announced funding for their very own COVID-19 safe voluntary isolation sites. Now, this particular press release, is pertaining to sites in Ontario. So the government of Canada has announced millions of dollars in funding, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding to build these camps in Ontario as well as all across Canada. So here are the quick facts. The government of Canada is providing up to $5,525,000 in funding to 4 projects across Ontario to operate 9 isolation sites, including 194 rooms. So yes, this is definitely something that is really taking place, and we definitely need to make sure the world knows that Canada may be the next place where we start to see these COVID camps being set up and having a lot of our family members and friends being actually sent to these camps. Now, it is interesting to note that most of this kind of stuff took place in the northern provinces of Australia, where they are more Aboriginal. I just wanted to make that clear. So again, up to $1 million in the county of Hastings, up to $3 million, totaling 40 rooms in Kenora District, up to $300,000 for 14 rooms in the city of Hamilton. They have also made them in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Nova Scotia. So these are all over Canada as well. They took place in Australia, so it's very possible that these things will take place here in Canada as well. Now, I do have a couple other important news articles I do want to touch on before we get started with Maxime Bernier, who's going to be joining us in 7 minutes for the live interview. The Canadian government is attempting to censor the internet akin to China, secretly trying to pass Bill C11. Now, Bill C11 is also known as the Streaming Protection Act. So the government of Canada is trying to say that they will protect Canadians by keeping certain information away from them, information that they deem as false. And as you guys are all aware, most of the information that they are deeming as false is actually true. Now, they have put false information things up on numerous articles I've written, shared videos about the World Economic Forum. So if Canada passes this Bill C11 law, we could expect the internet to vastly change in Canada. Now, the Communist Party of China actually has laws like this in place already, forbidding its citizens from entertaining different philosophies and ideas by blocking access to half of the internet. Even cryptocurrencies have been outlawed, and this is known as the Great Firewall of China, and was created under the same guise that the Canadian government is claiming, and is to protect the public from dangerous information. And now we know this is obviously false. They are trying to do exactly what the CPC does, and that's keep all of the information in-house, not let the real truth get out there. And when they control all the media outlets, this is way easier to do, to keep people less informed, to keep them dumb, to make sure that they don't know what is actually going on around them. So this is an important bill that we definitely need to stop. It's currently in the second reading. It hasn't reached the Senate yet, so we still have time to stop this bill. Now, with about 5 minutes remaining, I am going to take the last 5 minutes to slowly introduce the People's Party of Canada and Maxime Bernier. Now, for those who are aware and maybe are from Canada, they knew about a whole bunch of freedom rallies popping up back in 2021. So in 2021, there were all these freedom rallies taking place, and what a lot of people don't know is that these first freedom rallies were pretty much done by the PPC. They were the first ones to actually get out there and rally. They were organizing people. Where I'm from, just north of Barrie, the only rallies that ever took place against COVID restrictions and lockdowns and these overhanded government mandates was rallies done by the PPC. And this is a very important thing to make note of, because they've been actually fighting for Canadians' rights since the very beginning. Now, a lot of you may have just woke up 6 months ago, but they've been fighting for us even longer than that. And this is a very important distinction to make. So, while the People's Party of Canada was advocating for our rights, fighting these lockdown measures, organizing rallies, Pierre of the Conservative Party was talking about how Canada's vaccination rates were actually a failure, calling it the worst in the G7. So Pierre is definitely someone who has been pushing these vaccines on the Canadian public. So here he is. I've actually shared this video to my Facebook. He says Canada is losing, worst in the G7 on jobs, vaccines, and deficits. So he has repeated this stance the entire time in 2021. So I would just like to go over that and just show you that very quickly. Here is his tweets from Twitter. Here is him saying in February 24th, 2021, Canada's losing, worse than the G7 on vaccines. He repeats so many different things like this. Trudeau on vaccines is like the kid who keeps the whole family waiting for hours, then jumps in the car and screams, "What's the holdup? Move it." He has constantly ridiculed Justin Trudeau's lack of vaccines, the fact that he kept the border open too long, which is something that the Freedom Convoy was actually fighting for, to keep the border open, to stop these mandates. So it's interesting that he would show up to do a photo op for the one day, and in the entire time he was pushing these vaccines on the people. Now at the same time this was going on, PPC party leader Maxime Bernier was arrested by the RCMP for protesting against these same lockdowns and mandates. And this was happening when Pierre was still talking about how we have the worst vaccination rates in the country. So that's very important to make note of. Now, I also want to go over who the PPC is in general, because they have a lot of good information on their website. So here is their website here. Who is the People's Party of Canada? The People's Party of Canada brings together common sense, populism, classical conservatism, and libertarianism to create solutions adapted for challenges of the 21st century. Our beliefs are succinctly summarized in our 4 founding principles: freedom, responsibility, fairness, and respect. These principles guide and inform the policies of the People's Party. Maxime Bernier, a former Conservative MP and cabinet minister in Stephen Harper's government, formed the PPC in 2018 after realizing that the Conservative Party of Canada was too intellectually and morally corrupt to reform, having abandoned conservative principles long ago. And like I said, this was the only party that was actually standing up for Canadians at the time. Mr. Maxime Bernier is an avid runner. He has actually ran over 106 kilometers, raising $165,000. He has a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Quebec, Montreal, and entered law at the University of Ottawa. He was called to the Quebec bar in 1990. So we're going to get more into this as he joins us here. He should be joining us any moment. I have ran Maxime Bernier's name through numerous amounts of search engines, Facebook, Twitter, and I couldn't find one photo of him with anybody in particular relating to the World Economic Forum. Can't find any pictures of him with Bill Gates. I can't find anything. But who I can find a picture of with Bill Gates in 2015 is Pierre from the Conservatives. Now, he says it's inspiring to hear Bill Gates talk about his work with PM Harper to save moms and newborns in developing countries. And before we bring Maxime Bernier on, I just want to let you guys know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was vaccinating people as far back as 2011. So people that say Pierre didn't know this was going on or Bill Gates was this type of person, he definitely knew. This was something the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation talked about for a very, very long time. They've been doing it for over a decade, vaccinating third world countries and causing more harm than good in most of these instances. So now it's 1 o'clock. The Honorable Maxime Bernier has joined us here live on the show, so we are going to get into this interview right now. Mr. Maxime Bernier, it's an honor to have you today.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be with you, Luke. Thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you very much for joining us. Give me 1 second. I am having a little bit of difficulty with my live stream. For some reason, the Zoom meeting is not loading into the screen. There we go. Sorry about that, you guys. So here's the Honorable Maxime Bernier. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute honor. All of the other politicians would not talk to us, wouldn't give us the time of day. You took the time out of your day to sit down and talk to us, so I really want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it, and that's my, I believe as a politician, my goal is to reach to more people, so I like to be with you, to be able to explain what is our vision for this country, and that's an opportunity for me to be able to speak to you about that.
Well, we definitely thank you for joining us. It really means a lot. Before we get into the actual interview, if you could kindly just give yourself a brief introduction, who you are as a politician and as a person, and who exactly is the People's Party of Canada.
Yeah, thanks, Luke, for asking. Yeah, I'm Maxime Bernier. Before being in politics, I was working in the financial sector in Montreal. I'm not a career politician. I jumped into politics at 42 years old. Before that, like I said, I was VP of financial institutions in Montreal, VP of a bank and insurance company. So I decided to jump into politics in 2006. I had a dinner with Mr. Harper at that time, and he was looking for ideas, and he was looking also for candidates in Quebec. And we had a nice discussion. That was a good time for me to be active in politics. And I told Stephen Harper at that time, it was in May 2006, that if he wants to win a seat in Quebec, he has to say to Quebecers two things that are very important for them, but also for all Canadians, that he will respect our Constitution, not interfering in provincial jurisdiction. And I asked him, you must respect the autonomy of provinces. And also you must lower taxes to Quebecers and all Canadians. And I believe he liked it. And he delivered a speech in October in Quebec, 2006. And the goal of the speech was to explain to Quebecers that the Quebec government will keep their autonomy like other provincial governments. And so I decided to be a candidate in both. And I won that election. I was industry minister for 2 years, foreign affairs minister for a year and a half. And after that, I was minister for small business and tourism. And in 2015, when the Conservative didn't win the election at that time, as you remember, Justin Trudeau won the election. Stephen Harper resigned, and we had a leadership contest. I was one of the candidates, and I believe at that time we had about 12 candidates. And I was not the favorite candidates in the beginning of all these candidates, but at the end of the campaign, we did a good campaign based on conservative principles without doing any compromise with our principles. And conservative members really like that. And as you know, I was not able to win. I finished at 49% of the vote. And after that, I tried to work with Andrew Scheer. He was the leader elected for 13 months because our platform was very popular. And I tried to convince him and the establishment of the party to take some of our ideas to put that in the platform for the next general election, the 2019 election. And I wasn't able to convince them. And that's why I resigned from the party. And I said at that time, the Conservative Party of Canada is intellectually and morally corrupt, and they're not conservative anymore. They're only conservative in name. And, they don't want to talk about the real issues that we are facing here in our country. And I resigned. And a couple of weeks after that, we created in 2018 the People's Party of Canada. And we had our first election in 2019 with 1.6% of the vote. And the second election for us was the 2021 election last September. We had 5% of the vote. So this party is growing. We are doing politics differently because our platform is the same one at every election. We don't change. We don't look at polling or survey. We are speaking about what we believe openly with passion and conviction. And we believe that when you believe in the 4 principles of our party, that party will be created based on 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And all our policies are in line with these principles. So, and that's why we are doing politics differently. We believe that we have the best ideas, the best vision for this country, with a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect our Constitution, respect our Charter of Rights, respect taxpayers, and respect provincial jurisdictions and the autonomy of the provincial governments. So, and we are speaking about it. We know that, we can increase our support. We started by 0% in 2018 to 1.6 to 5%. And I believe at the next election, we will be able to increase our support of the vote and have our first candidates, our first People's Party candidate elected with maybe more than one. And, we are saying to Canadians, don't vote for the same thing. If you want to have big changes and you want to see a country that will respect your rights, we are the only party that is fighting for that. And the best example of that, Luke, was during the COVID hysteria the last 2 years. I was the only national leader that was speaking against these lockdowns, against curfew, against the stay-at-home orders, against mask mandates, against the vaccine passport. And we said, and I'm still believing in that, we must protect the older, the most vulnerable people, the one that are most in danger. So people older than 75 years old. And let's open the economy. People are responsible of their actions. So that was a very important theme at the last general election. So that's why, and I love doing.
I know for sure that this is something that's specifically important to Canadians, is that we keep the economy open. We watched the United States do it without a single problem. They didn't have any higher instances of COVID. And actually, in a lot of instances, they actually had lower infection rates and they had the economy open. They focused on protecting the older people. So I think that's something that is very, very important to Canadians.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we have more and more people now that are coming on our side. Our biggest challenge as a new political party is to reach more people. Actually, it's very difficult because the mainstream media is ignoring us and they don't speak about us. But actually, we are very active on social media. People can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca, and read our platform. And if they like it, they can become a member. They can subscribe to our newsletter. So there's a lot of things that they can do to be sure that we will regain our country, because the Canada of today is not the Canada that we want to. We want a more freer country and a more prosperous country.
Yes, most definitely. before I get into some other the questions that I do have, I do want to show something to everybody watching at home. Is that I couldn't find any pictures of Maxime Bernier with anybody from the World Economic Forum or from any central banking institutions, but I did find this picture of Mr. Bernier meeting Ron Paul. Now, for those who don't know who Ron Paul is, he is an American senator who was running for candidacy for the for presidency, and one of his policies was getting rid of the Federal Reserve, sort of like John F. Kennedy, and making the dollar backed by gold. And I just wanted to show this to people because I think it's important to know the types of people you have actually been involved with. And like I said, I could find pictures of Bill Gates with Pierre, but I can't find anything bad about you besides the fact that you did attend in 2008. And now we'll get into that, but we have some very, very important questions I would like to ask you before we do so. So if you don't mind, I would like to get started with that if we could.
Yes.
Okay, so the very first question I do want to ask you is Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, and Pierre of the Conservatives are all vaccinated or claim they have taken the vaccine. Now, are you vaccinated, and why or why not?
I decided not to take the 2 shots in the beginning of the pandemic. And yes, I'm not vaccinated and I won't be vaccinated. Why? Because it's simple. I'm looking at the data and I'm 59 years old. I'm in shape. I like to run every day. That's my only sport. And I'm eating well. So I don't have any comorbidities. And I looked at the data for a man under 60 years old. And if you are in shape, your chances of dying from COVID, not with COVID, from COVID, is about 0.05%. So you have 99.95% chances of surviving if you have COVID. And so I said, I won't take the 2 shots. And actually, I had COVID. I did have COVID. I think it was last October. And for me, it was a big cold, a big flu for maybe 3-4 days. And now, because of that, I developed antibodies and I have a good protection. So, but I was right because I'm with you right now. I didn't die from COVID like I expected. So that's why I decided not to take the 2 shots. And that's why, I believe that propaganda about COVID-19, that these draconian measures were not necessary to fight that virus. For the first time in the history of the world, we locked down healthy population to fight a virus. That was an experiment. That was a failed experiment. And I hope that you won't see that in the future. But because, Luke, I'm not vaccinated, it's not fair for me because I'm the only leader of a national political party that cannot travel by plane or by train across the country. And as the leader of the People's Party of Canada, it is my job to be on the ground, to meet people, to be sure that we'll have candidates in every riding in this country. And all these establishment leaders can travel by plane, but I cannot. So that's why I'm suing the federal government with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. The first hearing of that case will be the first week of September. And I believe if we have a good judge, we must win that. It is unconstitutional. It is immoral. It is illegal to have that restriction on unvaccinated people in this country, because now we know that everybody can catch and spread the virus. So I'm not more dangerous than another person that is vaccinated. So we must stop that discrimination and segregation in this country. So I hope that the judge will follow the Charter of Rights, and I hope that I'll be able to travel by plane, maybe before that or after that decision. So we'll see. But because of that, Luke, I will do a trip to Atlantic Canada starting the first 3 weeks of May, this in 2 weeks. I'll do that by car. And so it is a little bit challenging for me as a national leader to be able to travel across the country. So we'll see what will happen. But yes, we need to fight that. There's no logic, there's no reason to still have a vaccine passport in force for Canadians who want to travel across this country.
And I do want to make an important note here is that all of the other politicians in Canada, they can actually travel, but they actually haven't been traveling or meeting with the people. They are actually more fearful, sort of treating everyone like they are sick or whatever. And it's important to note that Maxime Bernier is right here with us. He can't travel just like us. He was even arrested for protesting these same things. So this is a very important distinction when making your vote coming up in the next election. You really need to know the truth and need to know what these political leaders are about. And that's what my goal is here today, is to try to show you guys who exactly is Maxime Bernier. You guys need to know the whole truth. And it's not about my opinion. It's about the words coming from his mouth. And these are things you guys definitely need to know.
Yeah, you're right about that, Luke. And I want to thank you for that. But yes, I was arrested last summer in Manitoba. That was a political repression because I had a meeting in a park, and at that time the regulations were saying that you can meet outside in a park but with less than 5 persons. And I believe that I did that meeting with the executive of the People's Party of Canada Riding Association over there, and we were maybe 10 persons in the park. And after that, I was the only one that was arrested, handcuffed, and put in jail for 12 hours after a political gathering in a park. That happened in Canada. We're not a democracy anymore when you do that. And they did that because I had a big rally that was planned in Winnipeg the day after. And they didn't want me to do that rally, so they put me in jail. And I always said, I will always fight for what I believe. And when I was with the truckers in Ottawa this winter, I told them, I'm ready to go to jail for what I believe. And actually, I want to thank the truckers. Because of them, more and more people understand now that you cannot trust these establishment politicians. Now you have Polyev that is speaking all about freedom, but where was he?
Where was he the entire time when the PPC was standing up? Where was he? He was actually calling Canada a failure for their vaccination rates, while at the same time you and the PPC were actually out fighting these and protesting against these things. So I actually want to say thank you to you for that. And I also want to thank the truckers. Because of the truckers, almost the entire world started rising up, creating their own freedom rallies, and we really witnessed a worldwide movement. And I think that is absolutely amazing. And I want to thank you on behalf of Canadians for fighting for us. You guys were the only political party to do so. So I definitely want to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
Now, the federal government is currently trying to enact Chinese-style censorship of the internet under the guise of protecting Canadians. What are your thoughts on this internet censorship bill called the Streaming Act, Bill C11?
Yeah, first of all, you're right. That's more censorship on social media. We have the censorship coming from the big techs right now, corporations, YouTube, Twitter. Actually, I'm shadow banned on Twitter right now. And there's no freedom of speech on social media by these big tech corporations. Now the federal government wants to add more censorship with that bill C11. And we are against that bill. because with that bill, bureaucrats would be able to look at what you are saying on social media. And if you're very popular, you'll have to be regulated by the CRTC, and you'll have to pay a special tax. You'll have to follow guidelines. And so that's a way to control what you're saying. They're saying that they're fighting against hate speech, but that's not the case. That's only a reason to censor the opponent of the government. So that bill must not pass in a free and democratic society.
Yes, and this bill is more geared towards stomping dissent out, sort of the way the Chinese government does so. So that's a very scary thing. We definitely need to fight this bill, for sure. Now, Canada has continually increased its immigration rates, even as house prices continue to soar. There are no affordable places for Canadians to live, really, and the immigration rate is only going to exacerbate the problem. If you're the leader of our great country of Canada, what would you do to fix this issue?
But first of all, we'll stop the illegal immigration, illegal refugees that are crossing the border southern Quebec at the Roxham Road illegally. And we must stop that. It's unfair. We must help the real refugees that are waiting in a camp somewhere in another country. I don't believe that the people who are crossing the border illegally at the Roxham Road, I don't believe that their life is in danger in the state of New York. So let's solve that problem first. Second, be sure to have a sustainable immigration. We are not against immigration. We are for a sustainable immigration, and we are against mass immigration. That's what is happening in our country. This year, the federal government will open our borders for 450,000 newcomers every year, starting this year. For me, that is mass immigration, and we must stop that. Our policy on immigration is to have people that will come here, that will have a job. It will be easier for them to be part of our society. And we must, go back to an average of maybe 150,000 a year, not 450,000 a year. So, and because of that, now we have housing prices that are going up. They're going up because of the demand, because we have more and more people that are coming in our country every year. So and when the liberals and the conservatives and Pierre Poilievre are saying that, we must give subsidies to municipalities and, try to give subsidies to Canadians to help them to buy a house, that's not the solution. First of all, we are broke. We don't have any money. We have a huge deficit. And, for the last 2 years, $450 billion deficit that we are paying right now with the inflation tax around 5.7%. That's the official number. But the real inflation in Canada, and your viewers know that the real inflation is more 10% than 5.7%. That's a tax, a real tax. And so we are broken. We cannot do that. If we want to be sure that the prices of homes won't go up too much, we need to work on the demand. We need to be sure to stop the mass immigration. That's the only solution. And actually, the finance minister, Minister Freeland, acknowledged that. And she said, it's a question of mathematics. If you have more people coming in Canada, they will need a place to live. And so if we reduce immigration, that will have a huge impact. But they don't want to do that. We are the only national political party that is speaking about that. Fewer immigrants, more economic immigrants, and real refugees, and like that will help to stop the prices going up for houses.
Most definitely. And what's also important to note is if you go on the World Economic Forum's website, they actually talk about mass migration, mass immigration, and it's something that they are actually trying to orchestrate. So it's no surprise that a member of the World Economic Forum, Chrystia Freeland, would be forcing mass immigration onto Canada while at the same time talking about how it doesn't make sense or how it's going to exacerbate the problem, but not actually doing anything about it. Now, if you were Prime Minister, what would you do about the digital IDs which are currently being phased in different provinces across Canada within collaboration of the World Economic Forum?
And the collaboration of the federal government also. So, yeah, no, we are against that. It's another way to try to control what we want to do in our life, in our everyday life. And so we won't promote that. We won't give any subsidies to provinces to build a system like that. And, you know, we won't be part of that system promoted by the World Economic Forum.
Now, you attended the World Economic Forum meetings in Davos in 2008. At the time, you were a Minister of Foreign Affairs. For reference, today's Minister of Foreign Affairs is Melanie Joly, and most people at home are probably asking, who is that? This isn't a job with sway on Canada's domestic policies. They're more so in a parrot role that parrots the party's stance on foreign policy. And what a lot of people want to know is what you were actually doing there, and if these mass vaccination, surveillance state, dictator-like ideologies were present there when you attended.
Yeah, first of all, Luke, I want to thank you for asking that question. It's a very important question. So that being said, yes, I was there in 2008. I was a foreign affairs minister at that time. But remember, at that time, Canada was in war in Afghanistan. And my role was to try to find other countries that will help us in Afghanistan. Because also, you know that our Canadian forces didn't have a lot of equipment at that time and didn't have also, they have a challenge with the equipment right now. So we must reinvest in our Canadian forces for sure. And that was the case at that time. So my goal was there because a lot of foreign affairs ministers, my counterparts at that time, were there at that meeting. So for me, that was an opportunity to meet a lot of foreign affairs ministers. And my only goal was to have meetings with them and asking them to help us in Afghanistan, giving us more equipment, more people, and helping us. We were in Kandahar. That was a very difficult places to be. And so that was my job. I was there for 2 days. I had a lot of meeting with them. I did not, and I want to focus on that. I did not assist in any meetings with the World Economic Forum. I was in Davos to have these meetings as a foreign affairs minister with other foreign affairs ministers at that time. After this meeting, I flew back to Canada, so I did not assist at that reunion anytime. So that's important to say. And that was the first time and the last time that I was there.
So when you were there, you didn't even hear anything about some of these policies that they had talked about trying to implement in the future. This was something that wasn't even on your radar, as you were more there, so meeting in a different room rather than actually meeting with the forum or actually talking to the forum.
The only thing that I was at the same place, I was in Davos and the forum was in Davos. So I was there, and these foreign affairs ministers were there to assist at these meetings from the World Economic Forum. And I was only there to meet them and having some commitments from them to help us in Afghanistan.
And thank you so much for taking the time to answer that question, because that's one of the things that a lot of people bring up when we're discussing the World Economic Forum, because as you know, most of the Canadians do not want foreign interests controlling our country. And this is something Klaus Schwab has spoken about numerous times on video, how he has penetrated the cabinets of the Trudeau of the Trudeau government. So this is something that's very, very concerning to Canadians. And it's good to know that you were only there for foreign policy. You weren't there for domestic policy or how we can, lock down Canadians. Most of these things wouldn't even have been talked about in 2008. As I said, they started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who was actually working with the World Economic Forum. They didn't start vaccinating people until about 2009, 2010. So these types of things wouldn't even have been present at the World Economic Forum at that time. And the World Economic Forum was known as a pretty good organization in regards to trying to fight for Mother Earth and things like that. So it's important to know that this was so long ago. Klaus Schwab's book wasn't published until 2019. By this time, Mr. Maxime Bernier had already left the Conservative Party, so he wasn't even aware these things were going on or being talked about within the cabinet, as far as I'm concerned. Would that be accurate to say?
Absolutely, Luke, and I didn't know what was the agenda of that meeting in 2008 because I didn't assist that meeting. And I want to be clear that if you go on our website, the People's Party of Canada, and read our platform, you'll know that our goal is to put Canadians first and our country first. We are fighting to keep this country sovereign without any influence coming from the UN, coming from the World Health Organization, coming from the World Economic Forum. We believe that the policies for Canadians must be done in Canada by Canadian politicians.
Thank you so much for that. Now, the Trudeau government is currently spending billions of dollars on foreign oil. They instituted a carbon tax. All of these things are leading to ridiculous prices for fuel. Now, what would you do to help Canadians at the gas pumps if you were Prime Minister?
First of all, we want to impose a carbon tax. We'll repeal that tax. I said that at the election in 2019, same thing in 2021. That will be the same platform. So no more carbon tax. And also what we will do, we will be sure to, first of all, balance the budget and do cuttings, all the spending that, are unconstitutional. And being sure to focus on Canadians. So the inflation is there, but people must understand why we have inflation in Canada. It's first of all because inflation in general, because we had a huge deficit of $450 billion, and that was financed by the Bank of Canada. They printed money out of thin air. And that is why we have inflation. When you have more money chasing fewer goods, you have inflation. And now we are paying for that. So what we must do for gas, to be sure to, first of all, build pipelines in this country. We don't have pipelines going to Western Canada or to Eastern Canada. And we are the only national political party that said, and it's still part of our platform, that if we have to use the Constitution, the Section 9210 in our Constitution, to be able to build pipelines, we'll do it. When you use that section in our Constitution, the federal government will have the full jurisdiction, the full responsibility to build pipelines and approve pipeline in this country, and nobody will be able to stop the federal government. Actually, in the history of our country, we used that clause more than 100 times to build national infrastructures across the country. So we must use it to be able to build pipelines. And that would be important. That will give us more prosperity, and also will be able in Eastern Canada to buy our own oil and gas coming from our country.
And this is a very important thing to note, is that a lot of people who are against pipelines, who are against oil and gas, Canada would freeze to death in the winter if it wasn't for oil and gas. You got to remember, it's dropping to -40, folks. This is not something you can survive with solar energy, especially when the skies are gray for 7 months of the year. So it's very important to make that desertion.
Yeah.
Now, the Bank of Canada has announced it was launching its own CBDC, or central bank digital currency. Are central bank digital currencies a problem, and what are your overall thoughts on them?
Yeah, first of all, we must say that central banks are a problem. They are creating inflation. Not only the Bank of Canada, but also the Fed in the US and the European Central Bank also. You know, we have a system of fiat money, so they can print money out of thin air. But money, if you have money in your pocket, that does not mean that you are richer. You know, you are rich because you produce something. When you produce something, after that, people are paying you for that, and you have that money. But now we have inflation. You can have a lot of money in your pocket, but if you cannot buy the same amount of goods and services with that money, you are losing your purchasing power. Everybody is poor. And that's why I'm against what the Bank of Canada did. And actually, we must be sure that the Bank of Canada, won't be able to print money out of thin air like that. And we believe that the Bank of Canada must have a zero inflation target. Now, the Bank of Canada has a 2% inflation target, but it's more than 2. It's 5.7% officially. And like I said before, the real inflation that you're paying every day must be around 10%. So that being said, 0% inflation, that would be the goal. Like that, every Canadian will keep their purchasing power. So you won't have inflation. 2% inflation is bad. 20% inflation is bad. So that's the policy that will solve that. And also, we must be sure to have more competition with the fiat currency. I believe in a gold standard. I believe in crypto currencies. We must have competition. And so that's something that we can do to be sure that the Bank of Canada won't create inflation anymore in the future.
Now, I do have a question that's very, very important to me, being that I am a full-blooded member of the Chippewa Nation in Canada. The federal government has repeated over the years that they need to get rid of the Indian problem. Before the vaccines were pushed onto the rest of the population, the vaccines were pushed onto the First Nation communities of Canada, which many Native people, especially the medicine men and the elders, they believe this is a continuation of that same agenda. Now, if you were Prime Minister, what would you have done differently?
First of all, our policy is very clear about that, about the COVID-19 vaccine. We believe that everybody must be free to decide if they want the vaccine or not. And the role of the federal government for me is to promote maybe that vaccine only to people at risk, that are older people with comorbidities. And so, I don't want to force anybody to take a vaccine that they don't want. The federal government, with the help of the Conservatives, the NDPs, and the Bloc Québécois and the Greens, all push that vaccine to everybody. And, they were telling us, if you don't take the vaccine, you're a bad Canadian. And, the good Canadian are the ones that are taking the vaccine. For me, we must respect everybody, and starting by the First Nations.
Thank you so much for that answer. With Ontario Bill 100 being passed last Thursday, for those who don't know, Bill 100 gives the government the authority to seize your vehicle for blocking roadways, to arrest you without a warrant just for protesting if it's damaging the economy. Maybe people are protesting in front of a store. Now these things are deemed illegal, and this bill is called Ontario Bill 100. What do you think can be done to prevent other provinces from trying to enact similar policies, and what can we do to reverse the one here in Ontario?
Yeah, first, you're right to say it's a bill at the provincial level in Ontario. You're right to say also other provinces have right now similar legislation like that in Alberta, actually now in Ontario. And I'm doing politics at the federal level. So, I cannot, as a politician, I cannot influence that, but I can speak against it. And I'm against that because that bill is not necessary. Actually, we had a blockade on the Ambassador Bridge in Ontario during the Freedom Convoy. And the police were able at that time to dismantle that and to reopen the bridge without using any special powers, any special tools. And the provincial government told people that they need that bill to be enforced because it will help if we have another crisis. But actually, they were able to solve that without giving these powers to police. And so that's why I believe that this bill is not necessary. And the interpretation of that can have a huge impact on our rights and freedoms. Yes, you're right. If you do a protest near a border in Canada, and the provincial government is saying, that is against the freedom of the free movement of goods and services, and it is not helping the economy. They can use these powers to stop that protest. In a democratic country, you must be able to protest, and that's an important also part of our Charter of Rights. So that's why we didn't need that bill. That bill now is in force in Ontario. In Alberta, they have a kind of a same provisions there also. So, and I don't believe it's the same thing at the federal level. Trudeau used the Emergencies Act to stop the protests in Ottawa, but the police over there didn't need that, and that was too much. So that bill, it's a little bit like that. It's too much. And I prefer to be on the side of individual freedoms and protecting our rights and freedoms.
Now, with all of the censorship currently taking place on Facebook and Twitter, like you said, you were shadow banned. I had actually had my account permanently suspended. What social media platform or platforms would you recommend people switching to with all of this censorship taking place?
Yeah, so I'm still on YouTube. I'm still on Twitter. But I want to say to people, follow me on Rumble. I'm there, and we have a lot of videos over there on Rumble. We are on Facebook, but people, I believe, that must be able to say what they want to say on social media, but that's not the case anymore on YouTube and on Twitter. So that's why I'm doing a kind of a transition from YouTube to Rumble, but the majority of our followers are on Twitter, and that's an important tool for us to be able to reach to more people. So what we must do, we must always fight for what we believe, and all these big techs. I hope that, as you know, in the news recently, maybe Twitter will be I hope by a person that believe in freedom of speech. We'll see that it's still in the news, but that would be good for everybody if that happened.
Most definitely. If Twitter could have its free speech back, Twitter becomes the best platform again. This is somewhere where I really like to be because it's more focused on what you feel, what you think. You get to write out how you feel, whereas other platforms are more just a picture like Instagram. And I really feel Twitter was so important, especially in regards to people getting out information from certain countries, from being under dictatorships. A lot of the information we got from these countries was because of Twitter. So it's definitely important that we try to fight for our right to be able to have freedom of speech.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, countries around the world have begun signing a treaty that would make it so the World Health Organization could override countries' constitutions during future pandemics. If you were elected, could we count on you to abolish this and remove our country of Canada from this treaty?
The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Like I said, we believe in this country. We are putting Canadian first, and our policies must be decided here in Canada by us, not coming from the World Health Organization or the UN or the World Economic Forum. So no, we won't be part of that for sure.
Now, someone close to me had asked me to ask you this, as it's very important to her, as her mother was one of the ones who wrote my tribe's dictionary. And they asked me to ask you this: if you were Prime Minister, would you entertain the idea of making First Nation languages the third official recognized language in the country of Canada?
So for a language to be an official language in this country, that language must be spoken by a lot of people. And I know that there's about 70 First Nations languages. And there's not a lot of people that are speaking these languages. What the federal government must do is to promote, and I know that there's program about that, to promote these languages. At the provincial level in Quebec, they're doing that also, try to preserve these languages. But going to be an official language in this country, we have English, we have French, and which one we're going to choose in these 70 languages that First Nations are speaking. Some of them are speaking. So, and it would be very costly also, because when you have an official language, everything must be translated. Every legislation, everything must be translated in that language in this country. So I understand that the federal government is spending money to try to preserve first these language and to promote them. But to go to giving them the title of official language in this country, it will be too costly to do. But also it's because there's not a lot of people that are speaking this language. That's why we must start by promoting that, helping First Nation to preserve that by the education system. And I think that's something that we can do.
And I just want to add is that even though there's all of these different tribes in Canada, within my tribe, the Ojibwe tribe, we actually speak different dialects of the same language, going from reservation to reservation. So not only is it like 70 different languages, but that is times like 13 if you take into account all of the different dialects that exist amongst different tribes, which I really think is important to add on to that as well.
Yeah, you're right. You know that better than myself.
So not just speaking from the side of politics, but what else do you feel people can do to beat the World Economic Forum's agenda, which by their own words, everyone will own nothing and be happy?
So what they must do, first of all, they must look at the platform of every political party in Canada. The Conservative, the NDP, the Liberal, and the Bloc Québécois, the Green. What is their position on that? And I can tell you, if you're doing that, you will see that we, the People's Party of Canada, is the only one that will fight for Canadian sovereignty, is the only one that won't have policies dictated by these organizations. And so if they want to have a free country, a more prosperous country, a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect them, their rights and their freedoms, that will respect the Constitution, we are the only party. So what they can do to be sure that Canada will be the country that we used to like before the Trudeau government, they have to vote for the PPC. They have to vote for their values. They have to speak about what they believe. They must help us to speak to more people. And you know, look at our platform. It's all about you Canadians first. So I hope we'll have more support. And this party is growing very fast. After only 3 years, we are at 5%. And I can tell you at the next election, we can be around, I don't know, 8, 10%, we don't know. But that would be an interesting election. And don't forget, at the next general election, that can be in 2 or 3 years, I will be part of the national debates. I will debate with these other leaders on TV. And that will be a nice opportunity for us to be able to reach to more people. People that are only listening to CBC and the CTV and the mainstream media. That will help us to grow our support. And people will see that we are answering the questions. We don't pander to any special interest group, and we are doing for politics for all Canadians. So if you believe in yourself, if you believe in this country, vote for us, support us.
Now, do you feel Canadians should be taking some steps to become a little bit more self-reliant, self-sufficient, maybe starting to grow some food just to sort of prepare for some of these things coming down the pipeline in the future?
Yeah, no, we don't know what would be the future, but I can tell you that with that inflation, and we may have a recession. So I believe that we must do everything first to fight that inflation, and we are the only party that has a solution for that. And actually, I always believe that people know better than a politician in Ottawa or bureaucrats in Ottawa what to do with their life. They know better what they want to do with their life. I don't want to impose anything on everybody, but I can tell you it will be, and it is right now, a difficult time for us, for Canadians, and that can be worse. So we must fight that big fat government in Ottawa, and that's because of that we are in a difficult situation. And all these other politicians are telling you, I want to give you more money, I will give you more support. That's not a solution, because the money will come from the Bank of Canada. That will be money out of thin air, and that would be more more oil, on the inflationary fire. When you give money to people that it's coming from the Bank of Canada out of thin air, you are creating inflation. And the money that you have, because the inflation is there, you cannot buy a lot of things with that. So that's a big problem. We must have a political party like the PPC that will always fight for a smaller government, balancing the budget, and telling the Bank of Canada to stop to print money out of thin air, because it's not sustainable.
Most definitely. Now, I am planning on speaking to the political leaders of freedom movements from Australia, the US, the UK, in a similar format. The World Economic Forum is pretty united worldwide, and it could be potentially beneficial for us to begin doing the same. If some of these other political leaders are open to it, would you be willing to come back and maybe take part in a panel with those leaders from other countries to discuss what we can do as a collective to sort of fight this agenda?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We must fight the UN agenda, and we must have our own agenda. And so, I'll be honored to participate with people that, like us, believe in a smaller government, believe in people. At the PPC, we have faith in people. We have faith and we believe in people. We believe that you have the ability, the dignity, and the right to make your own decision and determine your own destiny. So that's important. And we believe in the Western civilization values. So I'll be ready to have a discussion with other leaders that believe the same thing and want to keep their sovereignty as a country like we want.
Thank you so much for being willing to do that. In closing, I would just like to ask you if you have anything to say to the people out there who continually try to call you a globalist or that you work for the WEF. And do you have a message for all the Canadians watching at home?
Yes, for sure. I hope that you'll take some time to read our platform, to look at the videos that I did the last 15 years, and you'll see that I'm doing politics differently. We are doing politics differently. And what I'm telling you today, I said the same thing 3 years ago, and I will say the same thing in 3 years. Because we have a strong platform, and that's the same one at every election. So what I want you at home to do is, if you take some time before the next election to look at our platform, and if you like it, I hope you'll be able to be part of that family, and you can support us. But I can tell you, we won't change. We believe that we have the right ideas for this country, and the more people, the more people we can reach, the better it will be, because we'll be able to have more support. It's a question of time. We need to do in this country an ideological revolution, a freedom revolution, and the PPC is part of that with other people all across this country. So, and I believe that it can take time, but I believe that we can win that revolution if we stick to our principles openly, with passion and conviction. We'll be able to have more support, and we'll be able to change the public opinion, because the goal today is to change the public opinion. When you have more people that believe in themselves and not believing in a big fat government that is not respecting their rights and freedoms, the more people on our side, the better it will be, and the more influence we will have in this country. So I hope that more people will follow us. They can follow me on Twitter, Maxime Bernier. They can follow the PPC on Twitter, People's Party of Canada. They can follow me on Rumble, on Instagram, on YouTube. Every 2 weeks, I have a live, we call that the Mad Max Show, every Thursday at 7:30 Eastern Time. And I'm taking some questions also. So stay tuned. And I hope I'll be able to see you if you're living in Eastern Canada, in Atlantic Canada. I'll be there the first 3 weeks of May, and I hope I'll be able to meet you there.
Well, Mr. Bernier, I do want to say thank you so much for giving us your time. We actually went a half hour longer than we had previously talked about. So I do want to thank you for taking the time out to speak to us today. You didn't have to. No other political leaders would want to talk to us. You took the time out to speak to us. So I really want to thank you on behalf of Canadians for being willing to sit down with us and talk to us here today.
Thank you, Luke. I really appreciate that. Let's stay in touch.
Let's keep in touch. So thank you guys for Maxime Bernier for joining us today. That's going to conclude this segment of the Luke Sharp Show. I do want to leave you guys with a very important message, though. Do you understand the power that you have? Do you know why someone like me even exists in this space? Because of you. You had to consciously make a decision to watch my video, to click like on a post. This is a direct result of your power. A power that a lot of you don't realize you have. You need to understand that you have this power. The power to choose something different. The power to make changes. That power is in your hands. So we can change these countries for the better. We have the power. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. I'll see you guys next Wednesday for episode 2. Have yourselves a great rest of the week.